Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Wednesday the 5th of August 2015, and joining me on this edition are long-time stranger, games editor Mark Botwright.
Why thank you, so are you.
Assistant editor Steve Withers.
You guys look like an 80s rock band.
Oh, stop doing it with us.
I was really glad he asked me and not him, because I bet he's got the same one.
Exactly the same one. Right, ready.
And news editor Mark Hodgkinson.
I'm going to need therapy.
As are all of us at the end of this podcast. Welcome along. It's sunny where I am at the minute, although for July it seemed to be rather wet. That seems to be my memory of July this year. I don't know about anybody else, but...
Well, if you all live up near the Arctic, what can you expect? I think I think it's been pretty dry, but not that warm for July, I've got to say. But judging by my hay fever, very windy and very dry.
What's wind got to do with your hay fever?
Blows the pollen around, makes it worse.
I don't know, it almost seems like autumn's going to have a long run-in, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's how it feels at the moment, isn't it? It's like, right, we're already into autumn.
Yeah.
Next up, Christmas.
No, it's still summer. The schools are still in the summer holidays. It's still summer. And talking about school holidays and being run around like an idiot, how was your July, Mark?
I've survived so far. 3 weeks with the third week of summer holidays now, and we're still alive. Took a week off with the kids last week. Weather was pretty crap, so it was very expensive. So I had to pay for lots of things. So the weather.
Did you go to the movies, Mark?
We did. We went to see. Oh, friggin' hell.
Minions? Did you go see Minions?
No, not Minions. Inside Out, is it called?
Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. Wasn't that impressed. Kids didn't like it. The kids were just depressed when they came out of that. There's very little payoff at the end. Very little happy bit. It's all about a depression and moving home and it being very, very sad.
That's why Steve loved it.
Yeah, I think it's better for grown-ups, to be honest. The payoff at the end is about 5 minutes where she's happy again. And no, they just cried all the way through it. It was quite depressing.
As did Steve.
You brought your kids out of the cinema traumatised.
Yeah, pretty much. So no, it didn't go down well.
So you won't be listening to AVForums movie reviews in future then?
You should have gone and seen Minions.
Yes, I said that. The
anyway.
weather better pick up because I'm holidaying in the Lake District next week.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Brave.
Oh, dear. Have you seen the low that's sitting in the Atlantic at the minute and about to hit us at the weekend?
Not looking.
Hey, Mark, while you're there, Mark, you can go and check out the Withnell Cottage.
I could.
Where about in the lakes are you going?
Good question. I don't know. Towards the bottom.
Yeah, take it. Jenny sorts all that out.
Jenny sorts all that. I just turned up. That's possibly near the beach.
Beach? And lakes.
I know, but there's beach bits as well, aren't there? I'll tell you when I come back.
We can't wait, Mark.
It's got sand. It's got sands in the name.
Right. So
There's pollen count news and holiday news.
Yep, there you go. So that was July taken care of. It is the new month. We're going to come to that in a second. But first of all, we got stuff that you can win. I better do this because I've had to add competitions in from when the running order went out. So Thermaltake PC Gaming Bundle, courtesy of Scan, it closes on the 31st of August, so still got another month to go on that one. And Kelly's Heroes on Blu-ray is available till the 24th of August. And previous competition winners, Worst Kept Secret won Catch Me If You Can on Blu-ray, and Arabelle99 won the EE4GE, or 4G, Action Cam. Congratulations. Let's move on. And while we're talking about beginning of the month, let's do upcoming reviews first of all, because it's fresh in the mind. So, Steve, what have you got coming up in August?
This month, Phil, so far, I've got coming in the LG LHB 745 all-in-one system, and also the LG H4 wireless speaker. Although hopefully later in the month, should be seeing the first receivers from some manufacturers like Denon Marantz and Yamaha.
And what about some 4K TVs from Sony?
Hopefully, the 93C, definitely, and the 90C should be the two that we're hoping to see as soon as possible, actually.
Okay.
Oh, and possibly, hopefully, fingers crossed, some Philips TV should be hitting the reviews quite soon as well.
Okay, right. And Mark, what have you got coming?
I have got a 55-inch Panasonic 1080p TV, of all things.
A 1080p TV? What are you talking about?
Back in the olden days. I don't know what's going on. CS 520B, I believe it is. And it's pretty good, actually. That's my review.
You make it sound like it's steam powered.
Yeah, of course it's tongue-in-cheek, Mark. But obviously a lot of people buy it. I think it's 650 quid, I think it is, which is pretty good value for a 55-inch. 1080p or not. Yeah, it's good. I've liked it. I've also got a long-standing thing that's been ages. This is an Asus Chrome box, which I'm turned into a media center. I've spent ages messing around just using Chrome OS, and it's just no good for AVForums. So I've flashed OpenELEC on it, and it's brilliant. And I've got this is really me, an outdoor travel speaker, Bayen Audio Sound Scene speaker.
Are you taking it to the lakes, were you?
It's coming to the lakes, so it's.
Is it waterproof?
Exactly, it is. Yes, that is one of its USPs. So we can be able to test that out.
Is it sandproof?
Sandproof, I don't know. We'll have to check. It looks pretty robust, I have to say that.
All right, you could drop it from a great height then and see what
Yeah,
happens.
I'm going to test it out. I've got two, so if I break one, I can always use the other. And then just, more boxes coming all the time. Endless stream of little black boxes. I'm just
Make
saying.
your house sound like the warehouse at the end of Raiders. That's where they send it, Hodge's house.
Yes, and I have got a
Top people are working on it.
I daren't count how many streaming boxes are in this house. Close to 20 now, I think.
Jesus.
All in all.
Just think of the processing power that you have in your house at this moment in time.
If I combined it all into one, it'd be the ultimate media streamer.
You could maybe even run Windows 10 on it.
Maybe. One of them is running Windows 10.
I'm worried it's going to become self-aware.
So that's me on my life.
It'll become self-aware and then it'll think, oh, this shit. And kill itself. Sorry, Mark, I'm not having any downer on you.
It's fine. I feel like that a lot.
At the moment, I have a 1080p TV in for review from Sony. It's an Android TV, and it's a little bit temperamental at the moment. I've had to do a hard restart on it.
This isn't the sort of language you were using earlier.
Harsh language, true.
I'm giving the beep machine time to cool down. Yes, let's just say I've had a few issues with it so far, and I've had to do a hard restart on it, and I haven't started it up yet, but we'll see what happens when I give it its second chance. It may be that it has to go back. It might just be knackered, I don't know. And I've also got a Panasonic turning up tomorrow, a 4K CX680, which is only £100 more than your 1080 TV that you've got in, Mark.
Oh, is it?
So it'll be interesting to see where the corners are being cut for a 4K TV at that price point, if there are any.
How much is it?
$799.
For what screen size, sorry?
It's a 50 4K. It's $799.
That is cheap.
Yeah, and if it's anything like
Really cheap.
if it's anything like the CX700, which I had in recently, which was $999 for a 50-inch 4K TV, it could be quite the little bargain. And also on top of that, I've got a Blu-ray player that I need to write up, which is a Sony. And coming up later this month, we've got IFA, which I'm busy planning and putting things together for, and writing things that I've seen, but I can't say anything till IFA. Right, Steve, talking about TVs, you've actually got one in at the minute. The review is going to be up by the time the podcast goes up. And talking about reasonably priced 4K TVs, what have you been looking at?
Well, I thought it was reasonably priced until you told me the one you've got is only like $799. This is 55-inch though, so a bit bigger. 55-inch JU7500 from Samsung. Sits in the middle of their UHD lineup this year. So we've got the high-end JS range, which are all the ones with HDR and wider color spaces and 10-bit panels. And beneath the JU7500, you've got the JU6300, I think it is, which you've already reviewed. So this one, this is an interesting TV because I think it is competitively priced. You can get it for around about £1,400 if you shop around online at the moment, which is not bad for a 55-inch.
I don't know. It's only
Ultra
5
HD
inches.
TV.
It's only 5 inches.
Yes, but I'm not finished yet. What's interesting about this TV is that I didn't see the 8500. You did that, Mark, but was that edge lit?
Yes.
Yeah, this is it's got a direct backlight. This one, so it's got a full direct backlight. Still got local dimming. Local dimming, I think the same local dimming that's on the JU8500. Haven't seen that, as I said, but I don't think it's quite as good as it is on the higher end models, the JS 9000 and 9500. And I think you pointed out, Mark, that you didn't think the local dimming on the JU8500
it
was
wasn't
good.
bad, but it was definitely
Yeah, it's still good. It's still good, but I don't think it's quite as impressive. But it's still got local dimming. It's got a direct backlight. It's very nicely made. It's got the mini Connect box that comes on the JU8500. It's got the chamfered bezel that you get on the top of the line JS9500, and the same kind of curved stand and really well made. And I think, for what you're getting, that's a bloody good deal. You're getting a pretty decent TV. Okay, it's only got an 8-bit panel. It doesn't support HDR, and it hasn't got the DCI color space, full width color space. Although, to be honest, almost nothing has yet. But in terms of performance, image accuracy, and picture quality, and also backlight uniformity, I was really impressed. I thought this is a cracking TV for the money, and also a really good performer. So,
and I take it that's based on out of the box settings.
Yeah, the out-of-the-box settings were really, really accurate. I mean, all the errors, both in terms of color and in terms of grayscale, were below 3. So, I mean, that's even if you've got a calibration, even after we calibrated it for the review, the improvements weren't really that noticeable anyway. I mean, out of the box, really impressive. Good color accuracy across different saturation points. It's a really solid, really well made, really good TV, and I'm kind of thinking, why would you buy the 8500 other than maybe the future proofing? Obviously, you got the 10-bit panel and the HDR support. So if you want that, then that's why you would pay the extra money for the JU 8500. But otherwise, at that price point, it's a really strong competitor. Impressed, very impressed.
Steve, I think the big question is, it's certainly a question I keep asking myself every time I review something at the minute. Would you buy one? You
know what? I could say I've been thinking about this because I was watching some TV last night on it and thinking, you know what? I'd be very happy with this TV. If I was looking for a TV, if I had about $1.5 to spend on an Ultra HD TV, that would certainly be at the top of my list. Yes, I would be happy.
Is all the smart stuff working?
Yep. Yes. All the smart stuff works. So there's still a couple of apps that are not there yet. Like they used to have ITV Player last year. That's disappeared.
Yeah, who cares about that?
But on the whole, the majority of the stuff is there. It does work. So it's got the Tizen Smart platform, which is getting better as it becomes more bedded in. You've got the 2 remote controls. It supports 3D. It doesn't come with any glasses, but then again, the 9500 doesn't come with any glasses either, and that's $6,000. It does everything you could possibly want it to do. The only caveat I would say is obviously if you're thinking about future proofing, then doesn't support HDR, for example. But you're not going to find a TV that does at that price point. So if you've only got a limited budget and you're looking for something that can deliver a really good performance out of the box, as Phil said, that is probably key. Out of the box, excellent performance, and majority of what you're going to be watching is going to be either stream 4K if you can, or upscale 1080p. Then this TV will give you a stonky picture, and I was very impressed.
So moving on from the Samsung, and let's stick with TVs. Hisense, it's a name that everybody needs to get used to. They're going to be a massive brand in the UK and in the US, and it looks like they're really going all out to cement themselves in the US market at the minute, Steve, because they've just bought Sharp.
Yeah, they bought their Sharp's US operations, which means they basically bought a big factory in Mexico, and obviously the distribution outlets into North and South America. It's certainly part of Hisense's plan to increase their global presence. Obviously, for those that don't know who Hisense are, they are the biggest TV manufacturer in China. And I think on panel production, the third biggest in the world now. I think they're the only manufacturer, apart from Samsung, who produce curved screens at the moment, actually make their own curved panels. But they are huge, absolutely huge, and going to get bigger. And this is obviously part of their strategy. So they bought into the US through Sharp. I mean, Sharp, as we know, pulled out everywhere but Japan, I believe, last year. So I think they sold their European operations to TP Vision, who also own Philips.
No, they didn't actually.
They didn't actually? No, who did they sell it to?
No one.
No one wanted to buy it.
No one wanted it. So no, it's unsold at the moment.
TP Vision, of course, are Taiwanese, another Chinese/Taiwanese manufacturer. But Hisense, they're already available in the UK, and we'll be adding more retailers. So at the moment, I believe it's Richer Sounds, and you can online through AO, and they also do done a deal with Argos, and they're going to be adding more as they go forward. So I mean, yes, they're going to be a big brand, and I think that we realised this a few years ago when they took over the old Microsoft stand at CES, and suddenly they had this gigantic Hisense stand with loads of TVs on display, which looked really good.
Well, I think it's always been a thing that the Chinese were coming. It's just the economies of scale that they have, and then if you look at the TV market and the way that TV market has been going in the last 3 years, it's been a fight to the bottom, basically. And those that had no appetite for the fight have moved on, like Toshiba, like Sharp, like a couple of others. I mean, Philips sold their brand over to TP Vision and so on. Those that weren't up for the fight have gotten out of the arena because that's, prices. It's just economy of scale, and prices are going to go down and down and down. And sadly, that means quality as well, because you can only make things at certain price points, and the components and so on that get used at those price points will never be high end. So I think that's why when you look at things now, you're looking at the likes of Samsung, Panasonic, LG, we're talking about TVs that are costing north of £1,000 for their mid-range, and then higher prices because they're going for the quality market. They're going for where they can make a little bit of markup, because the bottom end of the market, and this is where Hisense are going to come in, because it's where all the new brands come in. It's where LG came in. It's where Samsung came in before they were big names. They're going to come in at that end of the market. They're obviously buying up a lot of IP stuff like Sharp's name and so on. And I think give it 3 years and we'll be talking Hisense in the same sentence as Samsung and LG.
Right, I think we've used example before, but if you go back 10 years, you wouldn't have thought that Samsung and LG would be the two dominant TV manufacturers back when LG was Lucky Gold Star. But things are very different now, and you're right. I think in another 5 years, the Chinese will become one of the dominant manufacturers, not just Hisense, but probably other Chinese manufacturers as well. But what's interesting, I think, is their timing is very good, because there is definitely a gap in the market right now. I know, because you've got so many other manufacturers, particularly the Japanese ones, just literally dropping out. So Sharp obviously, but also Toshiba pulled out of the market this year. So you've got no Toshiba, and they were targeting the lower end. So I think there is, and as you said, some of the manufacturers are going for the more high-end market to differentiate themselves. So I think there's a real opportunity here for Hisense to fill a gap.
It's also a good time because of all the technology transition as well, isn't it? So you've got 4K and HDR and OLED and all this kind of stuff emerging all at the same time. So good time to get a new brand in there, I think.
I think the saddest thing in all of this is, and we're guilty of this, we're just kind of walking over the top of two of the biggest brand names that ever were, and one of them who invented the LCD TV, and that's Sharp. Massive market share. I mean, if you were at university now doing business, this is the thing to study. How did Sharp get from being the inventor of LCD technology to selling huge shipments of the technology to suddenly now being nowhere and worthless in this market? So much so that they've had to sell out to an up and coming brand. And the same with Toshiba. In the days of CRT TV and so on, where I suppose you could make money, they were one of the dominant brands. Hello, Tosh got a Toshiba. I mean, but when you get a company like Sharp, who are now nowhere, it just kind of makes you think, 10 years ago, and they're still huge in their own home market, but everywhere else it just seems to be, was it badly run?
They make a lot of mobile displays though, don't they? I know that we're talking in terms of TV now, but that's where they make their money on mobile displays.
Yeah, but it's diversifying businesses. I mean, they all do it, and even Sony have chopped up their company and started making subsidiary companies. I mean, Sony Display are no longer part of the main Sony group, are they? So, I mean, even there, they're starting to separate out probably the loss-making business side of things, and it's just a real shame. And it's this fight to the bottom of the market, and I don't know why. It's maybe 20 years ago you walked into the pub having bought a new BMW and you boasted about how much you paid for your BMW. It seems to be nowadays that you'd walk into the pub with your BMW and say how big a discount you got off the and how cheap it is.
But do you not think that the idea of a kind of prestige technology product has been taken by the smartphone now? Because if you consider how much people are spending just continually with upgrading smartphones, if you've bought every Apple iPhone in comparison to what the same people might usually spend on TVs, they wouldn't be looking to upgrade that TV or spend that amount in any way. The smartphone's the kind of prestige product now.
Yeah, I mean, an iPhone 6 costs the same amount of money as this Panasonic TV I'm reviewing. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah, and in a couple of years' time, someone who owns that will be thinking about, once they've paid it off, changing to something else. Whereas you just, no one's doing that with TVs, or very few people are.
Yeah, the average cycle's about 10 years, isn't it? People replace the tellies.
It is interesting, though, how the middle of the market, there was a time where it would have been more, so we say, top-end brands that would kind of put something out that would appeal to people, that bit just below prestige pricing. Whereas now it's almost like the brands that have come up from the bottom. You've mentioned your kind of Samsungs and the like, and now they're creating very good sets.
Yeah, it's just the way that it's worked, hasn't it? I mean, at one point, going back to maybe the 60s and 70s, I think even Japanese brands had trouble breaking into the UK market, didn't they? So it kind of goes and swings around a bit. It just moves with I guess, where they can make money, and then once they can't make money, it moves on. It gets handed on to somebody else who's coming up, who have economies of scale greater and who can manage to make a profit. And then when those economies of scale disappear, I mean, it must be really expensive to make a TV in Japan nowadays compared to one in China, or even Taiwan, or
they really are made in Japan, aren't they? Usually they just ship them out, components out to factories elsewhere. I think Sharp, though, to a certain extent, have only got themselves to blame. I mean, how many times do we go to CES, Phil, and see these really great-looking Sharp TVs, and they never got released anywhere, and you never could buy them in the UK?
Well, they used to really annoyed me. Sharp and Toshiba, they would fly you out to places like Rome for their big launch, and this is Toshiba, and they would show you this cracking TV with all the latest processing and all the rest of it, and then the next morning you would have the UK briefing, and you'd be told that TV is not coming to the UK, and all we're getting is the cheapy up to mid-range level TVs.
It's expensive to make them left-hand drive, isn't it?
But in all seriousness, if they're not going to release the product, then nobody can buy the product. Then there isn't a market there, is there? It just seemed to be that they didn't want to take any chances.
Yeah.
They just wanted to sell the cheap stuff into the Argosies and catalogue stores and all that kind of thing, and they didn't want to release the good product, the really interesting product that we saw at CES and so on. They'd launch it in America because it's a bigger market. It's 10 times the size of the UK, maybe even 20 times the size of the UK market. But if you're not going to support the market, then you can't expect sales, and you kind of then blame the market that you're not making any money, you've got to pull out. And that's what happened with Toshiba and Sharp, and it's so annoying because you just knew that those TVs that were really nice TVs, and they would have sold.
Yeah,
but I mean, they had good branding with Aquos and that kind of thing. They had, shall we say, a word that people recognised.
Yeah, totally. But again, and it's a question I asked right at the start: has it been mismanaged? Outside of their home country, have Sharp been managed properly? Have the products been put to market properly? Have they looked at the markets and what the markets needed and hit those price points, or have they just given up? Mismanaged it. I mean, look at Toshiba. The news last week about all their executives having, diddled millions out of the company. So that's not going to do them any good, is it? So yeah, it's really sad. It is sad.
Sharp took a few left turns as well, didn't they? I'm thinking specifically of the yellow Pixel. They did some weird stuff towards the end. Yeah.
But again, it's a shame. It's like Pioneer pulling out, and before that, Fujitsu pulling out of the market, and then we've lost some really good brands that had some really good technology. But things move on, the market moves on, and it all comes down to economies of scale. And once Hisense are an established brand, there'll be somebody else, probably an Indian backed manufacturer, waiting to come in at that bottom end again, and we'll see the cycle repeat again. And that's not to say that any of the Hisense stuff's poor in any way. It's not. It looks like they're going to be a really competitive brand. And from the stuff that we've seen at CES, Steve, over the years, the quality of the stuff, if you would take the badges off the top four and line the TVs up, I think you'd be hard pushed to know whose TV was who.
I mean, some of them looked very impressive. They were showing. Obviously, I'm not sure these have actually been released, but they were showing OLED models 2-3 years ago. Looked impressive. They sensibly were cherry picking stuff rather than try and develop a lot of their own things. So, for example, they were using Android TV long before anybody else I know was. Because I think I saw them using it 2 years ago, or talking about using it on their panels. They're looking to fill a specific niche in the market, and I think they'll look to walk before they can run, and they'll take it sensibly, and they will become a player. And we're left in a situation now where, very sadly, the only two manufacturers left from Japan in the TV market are Sony and Panasonic, and even they, I would say, are that strong right now. So we'll see how it plays out. And
like we said earlier on, we've got IFA coming up at the end of August, beginning of September. Well, it's beginning of September, starts on the 2nd of September, is the first main press day of that. This is going to be an indicator, I think, as to where things are going to go more so than CES has recently. I think CES is basically turned into a technology show over the last 2 years, Steve. It used to be, this is the latest model, blah, blah, blah. It now seems to be CES this is the latest technology that's coming this year. And then IFA seems to cement where the model numbers are going to be, where the models are going to be, and how they're going to push this technology into the market.
Yeah, definitely. The last couple of years at IFA there's been some interesting stuff announced. More so perhaps than you're right than CES, which is, I mean, a lot of the TV manufacturers now they weren't even giving us actual model numbers at CES. They were just giving us an indication of technology that was going to be in the TVs, and we had to wait until things like the Panasonic convention, things like that, to actually find out details on their actual model numbers. So yeah, IFA could be. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. 4 weeks' time. I can't believe it's only 4 weeks until IFA, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm just going to mute it for a second because there's a cat on the desk. Excuse me, get off the desk.
They don't respond to that, Steve.
No, I know.
Polite requests.
She's obviously bored.
Right, so that's IFA coming up at the end of the month. We've kind of put the TV business to rights. I still think it's quite sad that we are losing these well-established brands, but I guess, Steve, if you're not fit enough, then you're not going to survive. If you're not got the economies of scale, or you haven't got your area of the market that you're prepared to spend the money in, then you're not going to get anywhere. And I think that's probably why OLED is taking so long to come to market and other technologies, because I think there's a reluctance, or maybe even just a fact of the money isn't there to invest.
Definitely the case in the Japanese manufacturers. I just don't think they've got the money to invest in. I mean, you look at the billions that LG have pumped into OLED, and you can see that it's a big risk. Even Samsung are prepared to take that risk at the moment. They're letting LG take all the risk basically as far as OLED goes, and we'll see whether that particular gamble pays off for LG. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a very competitive, very difficult, very tough market. As many manufacturers have found out. So good luck to Hisense, because I mean, as a consumer, we need multiple manufacturers out there to drive competition, to drive innovation. You don't want it down to a couple of manufacturers, because otherwise you're going to get screwed. So we need more manufacturers out there, and so when anyone new comes into the marketplace, I think that's a good thing, because it drives the other manufacturers to perform better. It drives them to be more competitive. So I really hope Hisense do well.
And of course, Mark, looking at the future, what we're probably going to have is just a monitor, some speakers, and an Android box.
Or 20 Android boxes.
20 stacked on top of each other. They're getting out at the wrong time almost, because they're always big screens was their thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the thing was, they didn't. I don't want to go back over the conversation.
No,
again,
but I mean,
but this was the annoying thing. We used to see some great stuff at CES that would get trickled into the American market, and we'd never see in the UK. And if that's, why show the stuff? Why get us excited over stuff if you just, and why flirt with our staff as well? Remember that, Steve?
Yes, I do.
Did you make a friend?
Right, so that wraps up hardware. We'll be back in a second with games news, and we actually have some. Right, so games news. And Mark is back. And Mark, we actually have some news to talk about.
That might be putting it a little strongly. But yeah, voting for PlayStation Plus games. I found this an interesting little idea, simply because there's been kind of murmurings of discontent, particularly amongst PlayStation 4 owners, with regards the instant game collection. So when you pay for your membership for PlayStation Plus, it allows you to play multiplayer games, but the big kind of incentive is the fact that you get free games per month. The problem is, when it was first introduced on the PlayStation 3, you had it was well into its life cycle, so they could offer lots of old games that were very well rated AAA titles. With the PlayStation 4, obviously it had a smaller catalogue of titles, and having it right from launch meant that it was very hard to kind of build up with regards the better ones. This seems a nice way to allow people to have their say, though, on which games they want to see given for the instant game collection. Couple of caveats for it, though, which is it's only yet to be released games, so therefore that pretty much means indies, small titles, and you're unlikely to see your older big AAA titles. So if anyone's looking at this thinking, yes, they'll get to vote for something like Killzone Shadowfall now that it's a kind of budget game that you can pick up for a tenner, you're still not going to get that. It's also not going to be monthly, it's regular intervals throughout the year. However, they have said that for the first promotion, the runner-up will be discounted. So there's a reason to engage with it anyway.
Slow news week, is it?
Very slow news week. I don't know. Other than that, the only thing that really piqued my interest was EA profits. Q1 are up. Digital sales account for 77%, and that gives you a little insight into just how much digital is the future. You can rail against it all you like, but they make $693 million, and 523 of that was digital.
That's a very significant number, isn't it? That 70 odd percent. And no wonder they're making a lot of money at those prices with the digital prices. Gracious.
It's huge, but I mean, just the downloadable games, that's 84 million of that. So that's not even the biggest chunk. They made 211 million from downloadable content.
Now, this downloadable content, is it only available on one platform, or is that across a number of platforms?
No, that's a number of platforms.
Right. Okay. So
So
there is scope there for competition if one platform decides to give you £5 off.
Oh yeah, yes, there is. However, the pricing policies via certainly the console stores are kind of shrouded in secrecy as to how much power the console manufacturer has, and generally I think it's set by publishers.
Because we could see it. Steve hinted at it with the TV side of things. If there's no competition there, they could set the prices as high as they like. Whereas, if you've got physical formats that are in stores like HMV still exist.
I think there's a couple left.
If there's a few stores that are selling copies of the same game, there's competition there to get your sales where they'll give you a freebie, or they'll knock £10 off or whatever. You take that away and it's all digital, then they could more or less demand what they want.
Yeah, this has been kind of one of the dangers that people highlighted, which was, games that you can pick up so cheap on disc. You think, well, what, I'd like to have that on my console. You get home, you assume that it might be at the same general price point. It won't be. It will be double, triple the price. And particularly for a company like EA, bear in mind they've got their own EA Access service where you can subscribe to them and then download a certain amount of games.
Is that what used to be Origin? Is that right? Is that EA?
No, EA Access is their service that they launched on Xbox One and PC, where you get access to their vault of everything. Certain amount of titles, and it's the one that actually Sony blocked because they said they were doing it for consumers. But I think really deep down they were doing it simply because they didn't want a rival service, because PlayStation Plus and the Instant Game Collection has, it's almost become synonymous with the PlayStation brand, to the point where some people still don't fully realise that Microsoft are offering something similar. But yeah, so there's not really the incentive for EA to drop those prices too much, because you don't want it rivaling what you might be paying in subscription. But they're just they're absolutely coining it with this, and I'd be very surprised if we don't hear at some point in the future someone questioning just how much competition there should be over online prices.
Now, I know they've gone bust, but on live they seem to be well ahead of the market in terms of this kind of thing. Do you see that kind of model working in the future? Maybe like a Netflix for games or an Amazon for games. Is that where it's heading, or do you think they're going to try and keep everything in-house and narrow the competition?
I think there's a definite future for that. I think, that is where we will end up at some point. Everyone's been kind of predicting the one ubiquitous box to rule them all at some point, or just everyone having a platform that you can access from a variety of boxes. Sony have already kind of started going down that route with the fact that PlayStation Now would be available on Samsung TVs. That didn't seem to get much coverage, but it seemed, a pretty major piece of news. And so that's very much where the future lies, I think, because we just can't. The traditional console model of buying a box, it will die at some point. It has to, and retail stores the same. You're slowly migrating from retail stores to online stores, and then I think it will just be a case of what you can download, or buying monthly subscriptions, that kind of thing. One of the big obstacles to that, and one of the kind of bizarre footnotes to it is that you would assume in a connected age where you can download huge files with much better broadband service these days, that we would have more demos of games. That's still a major reason that people are dragging their feet. And it's also a kind of a fuel to piracy. People just want a cheap way to be able to try a game. And I think with certain of the subscription services, you can sign up to something like an EA Access, play for your month, and then just decide, what, I'm not going to carry on with the subscription. And it will still have been cheaper than going out and trying to buy even one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, you see, that would appeal to me. Not being a gamer. I always think, it's like 300-400 quid for the console, and then it's 50 quid a game. It's a lot of money to spend if you're not really into it. You know what I mean? Or you're going to buy it to see. But if I could just buy the console and then pick and choose the content and pay for it, a few pence or a few pounds when I want to play this or that or the next thing, and pick and choose, or just pay a monthly subscription and get to play anything. That's got to open up the market to lots more people who otherwise, like I say, would sit in the silence because it's 300 or 400 quid for a console and 50 odd quid for a game.
Yeah, I mean, this is where things like the reason why smartphone gaming is so hugely profitable. It's not due to the amount of hours that a small group of people put into it. It's due to the fact that it's ubiquitous. Everyone's got this piece of technology that can play games on them, and then everyone doing so and spending small amounts ends up making huge amounts of money, shockingly enough. So the idea of a future where, like with OnLive, that you might be able to stream things from further away, so you need less technologically beefy products. It's not such a huge costing console in your room, but you could have a ubiquitous app that was available on your smart TV, on a streaming box, on so many different products that you can then access something from, like with a Netflix. That will be massively profitable. It's just a case. I think it's just a case of you need the broadband service to kind of catch up everywhere, and for it to be of a certain standard. The problem with something like OnLive was it was a good idea. However, if you looked at, say, people's reviews of the product, one person would say it's fantastic, another person would say it's terrible. Well, the differentiating factor there will be what someone's home network is. It's a little bit like if you look at reviews of routers or something, of so many different things that are connected. Two different people can have wildly different experiences, and unless they can make it, absolutely rock solid for the overwhelming majority of customers, then people won't migrate to it. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why people had a problem with the idea of an always online console from Microsoft. It wasn't just a kind of ideological aversion to that kind of future where you had a console always checking up on you. It was the fact that like in the past 6 weeks, my internet's gone down for a significant amount of time, and so I wouldn't want to be locked out of a console, out of things that I actually paid for.
Well, no, I think that's a good point across the board, isn't it? The idea that we're completely locked into online services for anything, regardless if it's gaming or whatever, TV, movies. Once you lose your broadband connection, you're stuffed, aren't you? At least if you don't have broadband, you can still pop a disc in your player or in your game console. It's a very good point, Mark.
In a weird way, I mean, what Ed was saying about was about 3G or 4G kind of filling in some of the gaps with regards broadband speed. Again, if you've got a phone, if you've got a smartphone, you're always likely to be somewhere where you can download something, where you can, where you're always connected.
Nope, not for me.
No, actually, to be honest, it's not for me either.
If my internet goes down and my phone is less than 3G, I'd have to go outside. I'd have to leave the house.
When my router died, I looked at my phone and I saw nothing there. And it's the most soul-destroying moment when you think that you're connected to an open Wi-Fi hotspot and you can't tap in a password quick enough.
Yeah. I mean, so some of us search that out for like when we go on our holidays and stuff like that. But to be honest, if my internet was too good, I don't even want to contemplate that.
I've got no Wi-Fi next week at all. Nothing.
Yeah, but you're on holiday, and that's the best way to be when you're on holidays, to switch off. But
Yeah, that's good.
the rest of the year, I don't know what I'd do. Like I said, I'd have to go outside and speak to people.
It's weird that kind of the internet going down is a little bit like the modern equivalent of getting a power cut or something. You feel like you've reverted to a previous age.
It's almost worse because you've still got all your things, but you can't.
It's an alien tactic. I don't want to break this to you guys, but I'm going to have to tell you now that the aliens have been here for years, and they're forcing us down this route where we could become ever more reliable on online technologies and being connected and all the rest of it, because they're just going to pull the plug, and once they pull the plug, none of us will be able to survive on our own, and they win without the war.
I'd be all right. I watch Bear Grylls.
I don't know. Power cut, worst thing in the world. Because then you lose everything.
What, worse than an alien invasion? A power cut?
Yeah, definitely. I had a power cut a couple of years ago, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't do anything. Everything I do involves electricity. So I was like, I had to get under the duvet.
Really horrible moment where you think, have I got a candle in the house?
I got under the duvet with a book. That was the only entertainment left to me. Because the heating involves electricity, so it was really cold in the house. It was a nightmare. I thought, blimey. It was a sobering, wake-up call to just.
This is what I'm telling you. It's all set in motion. Give it 10 years, the aliens will win without a war, because we won't be able to look after ourselves.
Good luck to them.
Anyway, is that games news?
I think that is games news.
Alien news.
You heard it here first. I don't know, and people say I spend too much time on my own. What's at the cinema, Steve?
Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the fifth in the Mission Impossible series, and I've got to say, really, really good fun. Really enjoyed it. I think one of the keys to this series of films is the way that they use a different director each time, and this time they were using Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote Usual Suspects and also directed Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise. And he wrote and directed this, and I've got to say, it's very entertaining. It's got some fantastic stunt work, a lot of which involves Mr. Cruise himself, doing some quite remarkable things. And interestingly, I love the way that the trailer didn't actually give you away too much at all, because that scene with the plane, that's the opening sequence before the credits. So in terms of the actual plot of the film and a lot that happens later, they didn't give anything away in the trailer, which was really good to see.
Right,
So
you see in the trailer that looks like it's taking place on a Top Gear test track, and now that we've just been told that they paid $250 million, that was him nicking the money, wasn't it? And getting away.
It did. I think I'm not quite sure what country they were supposed to be in, but that was quite clearly the UK, wasn't it? You could see how because that kind of green with the fences, with the hedgerows and stuff. It was just that's the UK. It's an amazing stunt, don't get me wrong. I mean, he is tied to the side of a plane, and it looks fantastic. And it's a great opening sequence. I mean, it's a really good movie. It's got a great opening sequence, which is kind of a bit like the Bond. It's a sort of separate little sequence in its own right. Then a really good credit sequence, and then it gets onto the story itself. And it was really enjoyable. There's an intelligent script to it, so it's a bit derivative in places, but then the whole series is derivative, and it's hard not to be derivative these days without So there's elements of Bond in there, there's elements of Hitchcock in there, there's elements of Bourne Identity in there, elements obviously of the original Mission Impossible show itself. It even references previous films, which I think is the first time they've done that explicitly. It's got a great cast. So you've got Cruise, obviously, but you've also got returning from previous Mission Impossible films. You've got Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, and Jeremy Renner. There's Rebecca Ferguson, who plays the female lead. She's very good in it too. Sean Harris, for me, the only weak spot. He's not bad as a villain, but he's just got this annoying habit of whispering really quietly, so you can't understand what he's saying. He was the guy that was in Jamaica Inn on BBC last year when there were all the complaints about no one could understand a word he was saying, and he's not much better in this, frankly. He's the guy that played the geologist in Prometheus film, the one that goes, "I'm only here for the money." Like, you went on an interstellar mission just for the money. Amazing. Anyway, he's the villain. But there's an interesting, he's head of a thing called the Syndicate, which is this anti-IMF organization, which is quite a good idea, which was mentioned very briefly at the end of the previous Mission Impossible movie. What was it called? Ghost Protocol, that was it. So, it's got a quite interesting script. It's very well made. It's got some fantastic stunt work, a good cast, very enjoyable. Is it the best of the series? Some people are saying it is. I'm not entirely sure. I think Ghost Protocol was really good. And I really thought Mission Impossible 3 was excellent too, when J.J. Abrams kind of revamped the whole series. it's definitely up there. Certainly one of the most enjoyable films I've seen all year in terms of excitement and action. There's some of the stunt work that they let Cruise do. I mean, you're thinking like, I'd love to see the insurance policy for this film because I mean he's like racing around motorbikes and stuff, Yeah,
but he does
really
that
dangerous.
But he does that in every film he does. I don't know if you had a look at the Oblivion extras, but he, a lot of the stunts there, he was doing all them for real. Falling from wires and jumping on motorbikes and all the rest of it. The guy's got death wish. Well, which one is it that opens up on him rock climbing without any safety?
That's the second one. I actually watched all 5, by the way. I watched all the other ones as well before I went to go and see the 5th one at the cinema. It starts off with him like free climbing, hanging there. I mean, I'm assuming there were some cables in there that they airbrushed out, but it looks really dangerous. He does a lot of that in this film too. Some of the bike work, stunt and the motorbike chasing it, I thought was excellent, really, really good. And it's clearly Tom Cruise in there riding that bike.
What was the one?
Hats off to the guy.
What was the other one? They all sort of merge into one, but there was one where it had a Spanish theme to it, and he did that chase with the Audi TT in it.
That was also Mission Impossible too.
Was it really? Right. Yeah. Because I mean that made that car that scene. Yeah.
Also, I'd forgotten this watching Mission Impossible, the original one from 1996. It's to make you laugh, Phil, because David Phelan's in it. He plays the steward on the Eurostar train. God, he looks young. He looks so young. Anyway, yes, it's certainly. I like the idea. I think the idea of using different directors has really paid off for this series of films. Keeps them fresh, and this has got a slightly grittier edge in places, a slightly more complicated plot. I think all the other previous ones involved rogue agents and arms dealers. This does not involve either of those, so I'm glad to say. Although I guess you could say that the actual IMF team have become the rogue agents in this sense. But anyway, it's very entertaining. Good solid 8 out of 10. Worth checking out if you like an action movie. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Right. This Friday, none of us are going to the cinema, so what are we missing?
Well, latest reboot. So Fantastic Four, which is being rebooted a mere 10 years after they launched the previous Fantastic Four movie, which had a sequel in 2007. So it's only 8 years after that sequel. They're rebooting it again. Although this time it's been directed by Josh Trank, who made Chronicle, which actually was very good. And it's meant to be apparently taking place in the same universe as the X-Men movies, apparently. I don't know how true that is. But yes, reboot of the Fantastic Four, where they've got, who have they got in it? Miles Teller, who was in Whiplash, and Kate Mara, who was in House of Cards, and he's Michael B. Johnson, who's an upcoming black actor who's playing Johnny Storm, which is weird because I thought Johnny Storm was the brother of Kate Mara's character. So
was that how they played the? Was that how they played the reporter in House of Cards?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, Jamie Bell is playing Ben Grimm, who becomes the Thing. So interesting cast of young actors.
So the Thing's going to do some ballet.
Be interesting to see what he can do. No, I mean the trailers have teased, and I'm just kind of annoyed. They're already rebooted something they only did 10 years ago. It just looks like they're just trying to jump on the whole Marvel bandwagon again, and then tying it in with the X-Men universe to try and create that kind of cinematic universe that's been worked so well for Marvel, and now DC are trying to replicate. It just looks like Fox are trying to do something similar themselves. But
did the Four not belong to Marvel at one point though?
Yeah, no. The Fantastic Four, basically Marvel went bust in the 90s. And flogged off a lot of their big titles to try and cover their costs, their debts. So Fantastic Four was sold to Fox, the X-Men was sold to Fox, and Spider-Man was sold to Sony, which is why they had to use things like Iron Man to launch their own stuff, because they still had the rights to Iron Man. Universal got the rights to the Incredible Hulk, but that's kind of reverted back to Marvel as long as they don't make a film which just exclusively stars the Hulk, which is why he'll only ever appear as a supporting character in other films rather than in his own film these days. And didn't they? And famously, the Fantastic Four was also the film that Roger Corman made. I think it was in the early 80s, where he had the rights to it. In order to keep the rights, he had to make a film by a certain date. So he made a film it was never intended to actually release, though he didn't tell the cast that, and made this really, really cheap film of the Fantastic Four in order to retain the rights for longer. So this is the third film version of the Fantastic Four, in fact. It's being rebooted, making it darker and more gritty and more realistic, and it might be good. Maybe it would be good. It very much depends on the script, I suppose. The cast is interesting though, but I can't say I'm enthused by it.
What is that noise?
That's the cat just jumping. Get off my Millennium Falcon, you little shit.
No one touches my falcon.
Right, to wrap up very quickly, Amazon paid 250 million quid, dollars, American company, for 36 episodes over 3 years from the old Top Gear team of Clarkson, May and Hammond. That is an extortionate amount of money, but the thing is, they're going to make it all back, aren't they, Mark?
Yeah, you would assume so. I mean, it's one of those things. When I heard the story, I hadn't seen anything about it, and I assumed that it was going to say Sky. But obviously, it makes massive sense for Amazon because they've needed something. They've needed one kind of high-profile show, one thing. You know, I think almost more than breadth of content, as long as you've got kind of one key selling point. You've seen with things like BT and their broadband with having the football. It brings in customers. Netflix, when they had House of Cards, it wouldn't matter how much that show cost. It got them so much kind of advertising and word of mouth, and this is what Amazon service needs.
Yeah, totally. And they will make this money. People will pay. What is it, £79 for the year? That's cheaper than a TV license.
It better be good though. I mean, it's a risky strategy in some ways, in the sense that, these things don't always translate. When you think there's a kind of an established formula or something, shows that have changed channels and gone to different broadcasters can go wrong.
But you see, the reason they've gotten around the contracts here is obviously it's an American company, because obviously they had in their contracts that they couldn't do car shows for 3 or 4 years, I think, with a UK broadcaster. So that's why ITV and Sky and stuff fell by the wayside, because they had clauses, terms in the contracts that they couldn't do that. So that's why they've gone with Amazon. One of the reasons why they've gone with Amazon.
I think there's 250 million reasons why they've gone with Amazon, Phil.
Well, yeah, but they would have been offered that by... I mean, they made an absolute mint for the BBC. I mean, you're talking about the licence fee and all the rest of it, but actually BBC Worldwide, the amount of coinage that they brought in selling Top Gear worldwide...
Didn't they say something like 100 million?
Yeah, it's 100 million a year, wasn't it? Or 90 million a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazon will advertise it much more than BBC ever did. They'll be absolutely...
The other thing is, another thing is, American company... do they fall under Ofcom rules? It's not a broadcast TV show. You've seen how bad Clarkson, or how close to the edge Clarkson's been with Ofcom and with the BBC. So does that open them up to be a bit more risky, to chance a few more things?
Already said they've got free reign, haven't they? Editorial reign, which should be.
Yeah.
Which is quite worrying in a way, as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it could be too much, and it could be that because they had constraints at the BBC, that's why they were as good as they were, because they had to think of ingenious ways of getting things past Ofcom and all that. So there is that side of things as well. But the other side of it is that it's Amazon, so they don't have advertising or anything like that. So it doesn't matter if they annoy car companies, or if they're going to the ITV or they're going to Channel 4 or something like that. Where advertisers are like I don't know, who are big car company advertisers, Audi or BMW or Volvo or whatever. They would have said to Channel, we're not going to advertise next to that because they slagged off our car. Whereas with Amazon, there's none of that. They don't take advertising, so they can be quite honest within their reviews as well, and annoy manufacturers and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of plus points there, but I think the biggest point, I think you put your finger on it there, Mark, is that with the no constraints, it could be that they go too far, or it could be that they're not made to work clever.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it goes. I'm not a massive Top Gear fan anyway, but I'm more interested in watching it now it's on Amazon for some. Well, now it will be on Amazon for some reason. I don't know why. I was expecting Netflix to get it, to be honest, but they must have just been outbid by Amazon. Seems a natural fit for a streaming company trying to sort of launch itself with Amazon, I guess, because it's popular all over the world, this show. So. Yeah,
well, that's it. I mean, even the last series they were doing it. They were simulcasting it, weren't they, around the world? So there was loads of broadcast. That's why there was such a big thing when the BBC cancelled it, because all these broadcasters had spent millions in getting the rights to show it as it was going out in the UK at the same time in their territory. So they'll coin it in. They'll make that money back quite easily, I would imagine. And I think if they get the formula right, then I think it'll make them all even richer. And poor Chris Evans stuck with... That's got to be the hardest gig in town, is it not? Taking on Top Gear and trying to make it a success.
It's going to die, isn't it? Without those three, I would think.
So Steve's been quite quiet on this because I know he's not a car person. He's probably not Top Gear, but
No, I couldn't care less about Top Gear, really.
But it's quite a big signal, though, for broadcast TV, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, no question. I mean, we've been talking about this for some time, and I think this is another nail in broadcast TV's coffin now, isn't it? When you've got someone like Amazon prepared to pay $250 million for 3 years for presumably for 3 series of whatever they call it, not Top Gear, but whatever the equivalent is going to be. That shows you where the future is, and if you read the government's green paper on the BBC that's been in the news recently, where they've talked about the license fee and the fact that it's unsustainable in the current broadcast television, and the license fee just really are unsustainable given the nature of modern technology and the way things have changed. So you've got to ask yourself how the BBC are going to fund itself. I've got nothing against BBC. I think they're fantastic, but clearly the license fee is an anachronism.
Yeah,
but also if you look at probably anyone under the age of 25 and ask them how much live TV they watch, I should imagine the answer to that is almost none, unless it maybe is a sporting event.
Yeah, ask me that.
That's me.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't watch live TV actually. So if we've already changed our viewing habits to that extent, you got to think really how long is it before broadcast TV becomes as sustainable as but then it goes back to the point that Mark B made, which is that's all well and good until you lose your broadband connection and suddenly you've got nothing to watch. At least if it's being broadcast over the airwaves, you can still watch it. So there's a danger to being too dependent on broadband as a delivery system, but there's no question that something like this and the stuff that Amazon and Netflix have been doing of late shows you that there is some serious money being pumped into.
Yeah, I mean, imagine Amazon buying the Great British Bake Off and Britain's Got Talent and what's the other Simon Cowell thing?
X
Factor. They pay $250 million for them as well, and because one thing with Amazon is they don't have to show viewing figures, they don't have to tell anybody how popular something is. So, and they seem to have unlimited funds at the minute. So, and they actually turned a profit this year, surprisingly. So they've got money to burn on these things, and if they're looking for ways to draw people in, buying programs up like Top Gear, they haven't bought Top Gear, they bought the stars of the show. But even if they get one or two other IP things in and pay the money for them, then that makes them a serious part of the broadcast industry. Then, even
it's a bit different this as well, isn't it? Because it's not like the traditional drama exclusive that they have. It's a more traditional magazine TV show, which is it's a first, isn't it? So it does make it more interesting, and the idea that they could buy up anything they want in theory.
Yeah, I'd be willing to start a whip round if they could take Britain's Got Talent off terrestrial TV.
I'll join you with that.
But what does terrestrial TV then become? And do the advertisers stay around to keep that going?
Well, they're not doing, are they? The advertising revenues are way down on broadcast TV now.
Right, so it started already. So and if they're talking about taking the license fee off the BBC and making them more commercial, where are they going to get the money from?
Well, what they're talking about doing is making the BBC effectively into the same kind of thing as Netflix and Amazon as a fee-paying service, which is, and then they're talking about having, two-tier service. So the basic package for whatever, $5 a month or $10 a month, and then the more advanced package, for more money, which ends up creating, a package for people who, can't afford to pay for the top-tier package, which kind of goes against the whole concept of the BBC, I think. But
I'm surprised how much they put into that service, though, for the idea that it is free. I.e., if they were going to start charging for it, I thought they would have held back things like being able to download programs until they started charging, because I don't see where they can go with the kind of two-tier system without it seeming like they're now almost regressing on some services and penalising people.
Well, I guess, the whole concept of the BBC and the way that it's been funded since its inception, no one ever realised where we would end up in this day and age where stuff is being delivered online, and the BBC has been leading the way in that. I mean, the iPlayer has been a very, has been quite groundbreaking and setting a groundbreaking in terms of what it's delivered and how it's delivered and how effective it's been. Long before we had things like Netflix and Amazon, there was still iPlayer available. So the BBC's led the way in that sense, but it's also, in its own way, created its own problem for itself, isn't it? By delivering all this content for free already to people online, suddenly they're now going to have to start charging for it, which is, like I say, it will appear like a step backwards.
And they're going to need to be more proactive in stopping people accessing iPlayer from overseas. Because basically, like what you do for Netflix, and a load of people in America access iPlayer for all the content, the BBC content.
Well, I was reading a thing in the paper actually at the weekend about how all these streaming services, people who streaming services, so like live sporting events.
Oh, did that thing in The Guardian?
Yes. Did you read that?
Yeah, I did. It was good.
What was this about? Assuming that, I'm not one of those people, but what was it about?
Sports, people streaming live sports over the internet.
Yeah.
And how incredibly hard it is to police it. And
how easy it is to do. Yeah. It's so easy to do as well. Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
That's the thing, they all do these services for free.
There are subscription services you can buy, though.
Yeah, and there are some that do advertising as well, but a lot of them, and the whole point is it's for the fans to see the games. Because the ridiculous thing is that you can't broadcast 3 o'clock kickoffs live in the UK, right? That's the rule. So that's why when they do live to games, they're not at 3 p.m. So, but their argument is that people still go to the ground. They've sold out the tickets to those grounds 10 times over. It's not like they're going to lose any sales broadcasting things at the same time.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you've got a small ground like QPR, that's easy to sell out. If you've got somewhere that's a lot bigger, I don't know, like the Stadium of Light in Sunderland, that's never sold out. And you're like 70 or 80 quid a ticket.
Well, perhaps they've dropped the price of the ticket, they could sell out the game a bit better. Is it? You're not kidding. 70, 80 pounds to watch one football match?
Yeah, 70 or 80 quid for a ticket. I'm trying to remember what the Old Trafford was the last time I was forced to go down there.
But obviously, all these games are broadcast outside the UK live, at 3 p.m. I mean, I know when I lived in Hong Kong, you could watch any Premiership match you wanted to.
Did you live in Hong Kong?
You've not mentioned that for a while.
Yeah, you've not mentioned
it for a long time. Anyway, the point is you could watch any Premier Match game you wanted live at 3 p.m. So people are streaming these things back into the UK, not for money, just because they feel that fans have the right to see their teams that they want to, and I think that's a valid point. Democracy in its purest form. Yeah. Kind of revolution.
Well, like you say, Steve, though, if they actually gave it back to the fans, it was supposed to be the working man's game. If they actually gave it back to the fans, got rid of the ludicrous sponsorship, what was the Premiership this year? Well over billions, wasn't it? And the teams all get to share that in the top league. Yet if you look at the leagues underneath that, it's drip fed. They're really poor in comparison. I mean, I think the difference between the bottom team in the Premiership and the top team in the Championship is something like 120 odd million quid. That's ludicrous.
And QPR's just found out.
Give it back to the people.
Exactly.
30 quid ticket to get into the grounds. If it's sold out, it's sold out. You don't get to see the game.
Yeah, let's start a protest. I'm deleting all my links to WYSIWYG now.
Oh dear me, I think we've done enough now. Enough damage done for another week. Right, so if you've got any views on any of the topics that we have raised this week, then leave us your thoughts. Leave them under the podcast in the podcast forum. Is broadcast TV dead? Is it doomed after Amazon paying all that money? TVs, is it now a race to the bottom of the market, or will companies like Hisense bring value back, and will Samsung, LG, Panasonic and the others still produce high-end TVs, or is that market dead? Leave us your thoughts in the podcast thread. My thanks to Mark Botwright.
You're a little limp.
Mark Hodgkinson.
Where's your hot sister and the monster?
And Steve Withers.
A few days in space. What's the worst that can happen?
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news and video. Plus, why not leave us a rating on iTunes, but only Steve.
Only if you give us 5 stars.
I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next Wednesday. That's a threat.